Imagine a conflict so absurd, so utterly bizarre, that entire history books simply gloss over it. A war fought, not for oil, not for land, but for a wooden bucket. Seems like a bad joke, right? But what if I told you this war actually happened, cost thousands of lives, and reshaped a nation? Why is it that nobody talks about the War of the Oaken Bucket, a war so peculiar, yet so devastating? Stay with me, because the deeper we dig into this historical oddity, the more unsettling its implications become. To understand how a simple bucket could ignite such a bloody conflict, we need to journey back to 14th century Italy, a land fractured by political and religious strife. This wasn't the unified Italy we know today. It was a patchwork of city-states, each fiercely independent, constantly vying for power, and often at each other's throats. Our story centers on two such cities, Modena and Bologna. For centuries, these two had been locked in a bitter rivalry, a feud that simmered beneath the surface, occasionally boiling over into open warfare. Bologna, a thriving center of learning and wealth, was a staunch supporter of the papacy, the Guelph faction. Modena, on the other hand, was a Ghibelline stronghold, loyal to the Holy Roman Emperor. This wasn't just a political disagreement. It was a deeply ingrained cultural animosity fueled by contrasting ideologies, border disputes, and centuries of accumulated grudges. Think of it less as a political divide and more as two deeply dysfunctional families living next door, constantly looking for a reason to fight. The stage was set for an explosion, and all it needed was the slightest spark. The inhabitants of both cities considered each other arrogant, treacherous, and utterly insufferable. Merchants from Modena would refuse to trade with Bolognese traders, and vice versa. It was a cold war, heating up with alarming regularity, and everyone knew that peace was a temporary illusion. The year is 1325, and the tension is palpable. Raids along the border were becoming more frequent, skirmishes more violent. It felt like walking on eggshells, except the eggs were primed to explode. Now, here's where our humble bucket enters the scene. One summer night, a group of Modenese soldiers, emboldened by a recent successful raid, slipped into Bolognese territory. Their mission? Not to capture a fort, not to ambush a patrol, but to raid a well in the heart of Bologna itself. They didn't just steal water, they took the wooden bucket that was used to draw it. A simple act of petty larceny, a schoolyard-level taunt, a symbolic slap in the face. But to Bologna, this wasn't just a bucket. It was an insult of the highest order, a direct challenge to their sovereignty and honor. The theft was seen as an unpardonable act, a deliberate provocation. Bologna demanded the return of their bucket. Modena, reveling in their cheeky triumph, flat out refused, adding insult to injury with a defiant taunt that the bucket now belonged to them. This refusal wasn't just about a bucket. It was about pride, about not backing down to their long-standing rivals. The call to arms went out. Bologna, outraged and humiliated, declared war. They rallied an army of over 30,000 men, a truly massive force for the period, bolstered by allies from Florence and other Guelph cities. They marched towards Modena, their banners flying, their hearts filled with vengeance. Modena, though significantly outnumbered with only around 7,000 soldiers, was prepared to defend its honor and its newly acquired wooden trophy to the last man. The Papal States themselves officially sided with Bologna, condemning Modena's actions. The emperor backed Modena. What began as a petty theft had spiraled into a full-blown international incident, drawing in powerful factions and threatening to unleash widespread conflict across Italy. The sheer absurdity of the cause overshadowed the very real danger that thousands of lives were about to be extinguished over an object of such minor value. On November 15, 1325, the armies clashed at Zappolino, a small village near the border. What followed was a brutal, bloody battle, a chaotic melee of steel and flesh. Despite their numerical disadvantage, the Modenese forces fought with a ferocity born of desperation and defiance. The battle raged for hours, painting the fields crimson. When the dust settled, the Bolognese forces were utterly routed. Thousands lay dead on the battlefield, a staggering 2,000 casualties for Bologna compared to a mere 500 for Modena. It was a decisive victory for Modena, a humiliating defeat for Bologna. But Modena wasn't content with just a military triumph. In a final, audacious act, they marched straight into Bologna's territory to demonstrate their complete dominance, and as a final, glorious symbol of their victory, they made sure to return with even more plunder, including another well-crafted wooden bucket from Bologna's city centre, a defiant, mocking gesture that cemented their triumph. This, however, was not the original bucket. The original, the one that started it all, was never returned. Instead, it was paraded through the streets of Modena as a trophy of war, and there it remains to this day, housed in the Torre della Ghirlandina, Modena's majestic bell tower, a simple, oaken bucket, a testament to a war fought over pride and a few planks of wood. It's almost unassuming in its display, a silent observer of centuries of history, yet it holds the weight of a forgotten conflict. To this day, the War of the Oaken Bucket remains a peculiar footnote in history, often recounted with a chuckle rather than serious historical analysis. Yet, it serves as a stark reminder of the volatile nature of human conflict, how the smallest slight, fueled by long-standing grudges and inflated pride, can escalate into devastating warfare. Thousands died, not for grand ideologies or strategic territories, but for a symbolic piece of wood. The bucket endures as a strange, almost whimsical monument to an utterly disastrous conflict, a symbol of human folly. The story of the War of the Oaken Bucket is more than just a historical curiosity. It's a cautionary tale about how pride can blind nations, how grudges can fester, and how sometimes the most absurd triggers can lead to unimaginable suffering. It forces us to ask, are some conflicts truly inevitable, or are we just wired to find a reason to fight? If you want to dive deeper into the hidden histories and forgotten conflicts that shaped our world, make sure you don't miss the next video, where we explore another bizarre battle that history tried to bury.